everybody? Welcome to Pharmaceutical Soccer. I hope you are having an absolutely fantastic start to your day. Whatever you're doing, I hope it's going well. It's good to have you here. Of course, I am here with Clay Trainum and Valer Shabila as always to discuss what is normal in our lives, apparently, and that is Nashville SC losing to Red Bull, I guess. What's up, guys? How are you?
I want to start this show by offering an apology to all the people with the last name Corcoran out there and how we butchered it last show. So it's Corcoran. I thought I imagined the R, so I kept saying Cochran.
No,
And
you
it's
need
all
you need to make another apology now because, like,
Well,
I
the funny thing
guarantee.
is like literally that's how I'd said it on here before, and that's how I was saying it during the night. But then I was like, Valaire's saying it this way, so clearly that's the way you're supposed to say it.
why do I have to make another apology, Stephen? I don't get
Because
it.
you think everybody with that last name of spelling it is Corcoran. No, I guarantee you some of them are Cochran. His is specifically Corcoran.
Okay, well, I don't care about everybody else. I'm just saying there's an Nashville SC player, and during I went back and rewatched my post-match sort of instant reaction from the New England game, and there's something that happens in my head where I'm recording and I only have 2 minutes, right? So I'm like trying to hurry up, trying to say it, and in my head I'm trying to remember whether or not there's an R in his last name. And I convinced myself that there wasn't, and I just thought that art kind of was there. And then I kid you not, after we released the episode, obviously we did the episode a couple days later, but it kind of stuck with me, right? After we released the episode, I got like three different text messages from people being like, "Hey, you're saying this wrong." I was like, "Oh, all right, great." So I just had to start today's episode with that.
I will say this, like name mispronunciations aside, and by the way, shout out to producer Mason, RIP, who is the king of name misspellings and mispronunciations on this show. Uh, but we skipped past the most important part, which we normally start with Valaire. But since Steven actually went to the game and subjected himself to a Red Bull New York away game, Steven, how was your weekend?
Well, it's been a weird weekend. Some personal stuff, which is always makes other stuff interesting. But I got to go to New Jersey, which was it was a good time. I'm not gonna lie. One, it was I cannot tell you how cold it was. It was 40-mile-an-hour winds outside, getting to the point of like 20 degree. It was miserable. Like when it came to going to the tailgate and stuff like that. But Red Bulls fans are fun. Uh, I very much enjoyed it. It was expected when watching that first goal go in to just hate your life so much and just expect what's going to happen, which is ended up happening in that way. Um, but I mean, Red Bull, yay.
One of the wildest things about that stadium is I think objectively, 10, 15 years ago, everyone would have called that like the best like soccer specific stadium in the country. And it is nice, like it is nice, but it like does not measure up anymore compared to all the ones that have been built, which is like a pretty, I mean, it's a good thing
Yeah.
overall, but it was like jarring, going up there and now having been, around the league for several years now and seeing all the new stadiums go up, like the amount of jump that like the jump that the league has made overall since that stadium was built is really impressive. And
It
shout out to
everybody was
Sports
really kind.
Illustrated Stadium.
It was a lot different than NYCFC, which was like unique to see the dichotomy. Everybody was a lot nicer at Red Bull. Nobody tried to fight me. I did have one of uh, the president of the Viking Army, or was president of the Viking Army. Her name is Gladys, good friend of mine. Love her. She was very kind to me during everything. Shout out to her. One of my worst fears ever happened to her, where a smoke bomb exploded in her hand. Like the entire thing exploded. Um, has some injuries to her hand that she has to deal with, some burns, all of that type of stuff. I am so glad that never happened to me in my existence of capoism.
Steven, I have a
Capo.
question.
Yes.
I have a question. In terms of in terms of the atmosphere, like Red Bulls, I feel like just have a reputation around the league of it being not a great atmosphere. So how was that experiencing it as the opposition fan, but just as a neutral, like going to a stadium like that and watching an MLS game?
I thought it was really good. I mean, for there wasn't a ton of people there. Not gonna lie, it was fairly empty. We had an entire two sections to ourselves for 8 fans being there. I will say the march was a lot of fun. They do a Bohemian Rhapsody rendition at the beginning where they do beer showers in the beginning of it, and the wind just carried all of the beer to other people. And I'm glad that happened because it was 15 degrees and windy. But I think they do what they can with what they have when it comes to the people, the experience, the atmosphere. Um, yeah, I enjoyed it, and I think a lot of people in the stadium understood and were celebrating my victory in prop bets, and that's what
Mm.
I mainly kind of took out of my experience for that.
We'll get to the rest of our weekend update, but I just want to address it. Steven, now you have a really good shot at winning prop bets on the show, but I may remind you that this year, prop bets is just not on the show. It's everyone who signed up to do prop bets that listens to the show. And I regret to inform you that you are not the only person that put 91 on Red Bulls being the first loss for an SC, which means that there's somebody who took the rest of the questions probably a little more seriously than you did, who's probably got a better shot at winning than you do.
And that's perfectly fine. You could clip this out if you want, Joel. This, in my opinion, at the current moment, patience don't matter. All that
Wow.
matters is beating the two of you at the current moment. To me, that's all I care about.
Well, that's not guaranteed either. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see, I think.
This is coming
Yeah.
from the man who watches himself, his post-match reactions after matches over and over, like it's a sitcom to fall asleep, as you have described.
No, I don't watch it to
Joel
fall
wants me to
asleep.
let you know that you hate subscribers, and this is here us finding out that they don't.
Yeah. This
And
is
I
this is
think
very
that that is
this
scandalous.
I am on the phone with Ben Wright at the moment to see what we can do about this situation. Shout out to all the 615 subscribers. We appreciate you guys. If you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure to subscribe. There is a free tier, of course, but we would love it if you can chip in a few bucks a month to help us out.
I was gonna make a joke saying like, "Yeah, let's go 615 lawyers. What do you got?" And then I realized that there is actually a really good lawyer in the 615 circle, so I can't really do that.
Not to be the person who rushes things along because I'm usually not that person, but we have a special guest coming your way here in a few minutes, and we kind of probably need to talk a little bit more about the game real quick.
Well, I think obviously we'll talk to Tony a little bit more about that. I don't know if you're trying to make that a secret or not. We have Tony Husband here. Yay, that's fun. I didn't know if you were trying to make it a secret or not.
It's
But
gonna be on the title of the
Yeah, I
episode.
mean it'll be it.
Yeah.
I guess it would be. I don't know. Okay, that was anyways. Look, it Nashville 2.0 is supposed to be this whole brand new thing, right? That we come in, do this whole, roster change, way we do matches, the way that we go about it. 0 goals in 2 matches has now happened. We still can't beat a Red Bull team that we've had multiple problems against. Are you guys still optimistic, or are you starting to see something that you don't like?
It, I don't know if I called optimistic. I will tell you this. I haven't changed my take on this team based on the 2 matches. I put them in the eighth, ninth seed prediction for the Eastern Conference. If I were to do it again right now after these 2 matches, I'll probably put them right around there. Um, I think there is a clear um, progression in terms of how the ball is played for Nashville SC and how they handle the ball and how comfortable they are on the ball. Something that we haven't seen a Nashville SC team have ever. Does that has that translated to goals? Absolutely not. Has that translated to creating even dangerous chances? Kind of, but not really to the level that you need in order to make an impact in this league. However, that's all kind of expected. I think the part that I am most curious about is players coming back from injuries. So you have Brugman and Acosta, who were most likely going to start in that midfield. At least one of them was going to start, and the other one was going to come off the bench. And then you have Schaffelberg, who is another important player. Obviously, we've talked about his position where he ends up, but nonetheless, those are three very big players. And I said this to Ben the other day, but I don't think the Red Bull game plays out like this if Brian Acosta, Gaston Brugman, and Patrick Jasbeck, if one of them had started and played in that game. And that's no offense to the guys who played, but I do think there was a little bit of a stability that these three can bring that Nashville just hasn't seen so far from these two games.
Yeah, I mean it's really a depth thing. I mean, in this league, we talk about it every season about how depth separates the okay teams from the good teams and the good teams from the great teams. And ultimately, Nashville is not going to be a good team. And this is no disrespect intended to the players I'm mentioning here. It's not going to be a good team if you have a rookie in Wyatt Meyer and another rookie, albeit a talented young player in Corcoran starting. Like that's not what you sign those players to be. You sign those players to be depth pieces who will get bled and kind of come through the lineup, and maybe a year or two from now they can be more important players in the Nashville lineup. It's just that's not what their role is now, and they're having to play that role due to injuries. I do think that at times when we see something that's closer to what Nashville wants to have out on the field from like an optimum, end result sort of thing, like whether that's Yazbek or Kasim, when they get onto the field, you do see a difference in the way that Nashville plays. Now, is that difference brought upon being in a game where you're already losing 2-0? Or is that something that they're really changing what the other teams are doing? Because I think the Red Bulls, it's MLS, you've got a 2-goal lead, you're going to do what you can to win that game and see it out. I don't think the Red Bulls are playing the same way if it's scoreless as they are when they lead 2-0. So I think there's a lot to like from what you saw in Nashville in that second half. I do have questions about, maybe repeating that going forward. And I think, but it becomes more likely to repeat going forward, of course, once the team gets closer and closer to full health, which hopefully will be here within the next month or so.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, Valera. I kind of disagree with you. I don't necessarily believe that stability in the midfield. Like you knew what the Red Bulls was bringing when it came to a press. You knew the way that they like to play, and what did Nashville try to do? They tried to smack them in the face with the same style of play when it came to the narrow play in the beginning. The same thing that worked against New England. You knew what Red Bulls was bringing. It didn't work. You then go
Well,
into the
not
second. You go into the second half, you spread it a little bit wider, you get a little bit more, stability in those wider spaces, and you started to see a little bit more. I'm not necessarily, disagree like fully like disagreeing with you, but it's one of those things where we were used to Gary not changing a system based on a team that we were playing. Like I understand it's always going to be shouldn't Nashville 2.0 be trying to figure some of this stuff out?
They did. I mean, in a way, they stopped it at 2-0, right? I mean, there were two mistakes, and then I mean, look, it's not perfect, but one thing Walker Zimmerman talked about after the game when we asked him is in-game adjustments, and he thought they could have done that a little bit earlier. What that means is that maybe getting to those wider spots, getting the defensive midfielders a little bit wider. But what I'm saying about the inexperience of these two players is not about their skill and ability. I'm just saying in terms of getting essentially punched in the face by the Red Bulls, you can't train for that. You can try to redo it in training, and even BJ Callahan alluded to this. You can try to create these situations in training. Until you're there, you're sitting in Sports Illustrated arena and you have 11 players running at you, pretty much 10 players running at you at any given moment. That's an experience that they would learn from, especially the younger players making their appearance for the first time there. I think if Brugman was there or Acosta was there, the reason I'm saying that it would be different is because those players have experienced that, and I think they have learned from those mistakes. I will say one more thing before we jump here. I think Nashville SC have a little bit of a longer leash this season because of the style of play and because the new players and new coach and all that stuff. If they don't turn things around, I think in the next game or two, if things are not turned around, I think it will immediately snap back to what it was last season, and they need to avoid that at all costs possible.
Yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with a young team, obviously confidence is always one of the things you want people to believe in the project as it's coming together. And not that Nashville is a young team, but they are depending on a number of young players. The one thing I do want to make sure that we mention is obviously the first goal was a bit of a mess, kind of mistakes clearing, mistakes like just allowing for a goal to happen. And when it happens like that in the first 10 minutes, it is something that can kind of undo everything that you had planned for the match to play out. Like I mean, that's an easy thing to point to, but like the second goal, Forsberg scores a banger. I mean, that happens. That's what DPs do. That's what Nashville needs their DPs to do, by the way. But like that first goal, that can be uh a real momentum killer, a real vibe killer, to bring back a Nashville word. But like, I do think that having the young players out there dealing with an early setback like that and then having to play through it is something that will ultimately benefit Nashville down the road, even if it's completely frustrating at the moment.
It is extreme. Kim, one thing I just want to mention is as we're randomly mentioning things over time, I also would like to do that. Can Ahmed Kassem start next week?
Probably at home against Portland, who are kind of gonna try to have an open game of some sort. I think that adds up.
Cool. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Valera, work your magic, make that happen. That'd be great. Of course, we will be back here in a little bit, of course, with our special guest, Tony Husband. Excited to have him back on the show. We'll have conversations with him as well as predicting what's going to happen against Portland here next week coming up. And we're going to do that next right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer.
And welcome back to Pharmaceutical Soccer, a part of the 615 Soccer Mafia, as Stephen Robinson likes to call it. We have a special guest this week joining us here in the pharmacy. He is a cricketing legend for the Devon Colts, the pride of Bournemouth University, known around the world as a track broadcaster. You may hear his voice at the National Football Museum in Manchester. He called football all over the world, but mostly in England, prior to coming to the U.S. One of his last games in England, by the way, a 5-0 win for Bournemouth over Brighton, featuring a goal scored by Merseyside Derby hero Dan Gosling. He is the former NSC broadcaster, current Apple TV broadcaster, and the pride of the south of England, Tony Husband. Welcome to the pharmacy.
Clay, thank you very much. It's great to be on, fellas. And Clay, thanks for reminding me of the games that I'd forgotten in that intro. So that was excellent, excellently done. And I have to always credit you for bringing cricket into the conversation, which is a sport I just don't spend much time talking about these days. And indeed for the National Football Museum reference, because you're the one who discovered it. I didn't even know about that. So I appreciate that greatly.
We already covered
really
Major League Soccer.
I wanted to do a lot more digging on Tony, but he's got it pretty. He's done some scrubbing on the internet. It's hard to find stuff, and so some of this is pulled from his own bio. He just forgot he wrote it.
Well, I'm not sure about that. This is actually a really good segue, Tony. I'm not gonna lie. In the past, like 4 or 5 months, I learned something about you in DC. Actually, so I live in DC, and I met one of your producers randomly out for Apple TV specifically. I heard something about you really loving orange Gatorade. Is this a true thing that is like orange Gatorade, you have to do it before every single match? I would love to know more about this.
Well, it is partly true, but what I will say is it's a symptom of working in 100-degree temperatures in the summer that drew me towards my love of I call them Lucozade by accident because our Gatorade in the UK is Lucozade. It's basically the same thing. But since in England, really all you want for a soccer match is a cup of tea or cup of coffee, a warm cup of tea or coffee next to you. Now, in the States, if you send me to Houston in August, I can probably get through, 6 bottles of orange Gatorade in a 90-minute game. So it's, don't say I don't adapt, Stephen, to my surroundings. All right. But I have had to adapt to that considerably. But you know what? I still get a coffee in there as well. I'll have a little coffee at halftime.
It's a purely survival tactic in Houston, it seems like. I mean, he's just doing it for the betterment of your health.
Yes.
You did miss something, Clay, on that intro. All the emergency announcements at Geodis Park of how to exit,
Yeah,
also done by Tony Husband. So,
Are they
um,
really?
of course they are.
they are. Yeah,
And
yeah.
and the Spanish ones used to be done by Anibal Godoy. I haven't listened to this season. We'll see. We'll see who it is.
They
We'll have to
definitely
see.
weren't done by me, but I do. I can still recall the day that I received a phone call, and I was asked, "Could you come down to the stadium? We need you to read some announcements." And I literally, sat in a room and recorded all of those announcements. And it's still a source of pride every match day when I'm in Geodis Park, is that my voice still booms out telling you how to leave. Don't hear it over the goal clips anymore, but you still hear me telling you how to get out.
Well, speaking of indelible imprints on Nashville Soccer Club, what did you think of yet another loss to the New York Red Bulls over the weekend?
Oh, the Red Bulls. I mean, when you think about this series, Red Bulls Nashville matches are probably not high on my list of great memories of MLS games. These two teams tend to produce rather rugged and tough affairs down the years. I watched it back the whole game, and I've read some of the reactions as well. I've read Villar's fine work on it, and I've looked at Ben Wright's tactical breakdown as well. So it's great to be able to, to when you've not watched the game live or been at the games, to do that and to get a real feeling of what it was like on the night, even when you're watching it back on tape. But it's a transitional year, I think. 2.0 is transitional 2.0. I think, there's parts that are coming together. There's new faces coming in. There's stylistically some changes, evolving out of still actually what is fundamentally some of the characteristics of the original team, which is about trying to have this kind of strong spine, be solid. And it just changes a little bit as you move higher up the field, and it's a more condensed style of play. I'm kind of gearing up to call it potentially the wingless wonders of Nashville, because our only England winning team in the World Cup finals, 1966, were dubbed the wingless wonders because our coach at the time was Sir Alf Ramsey, and he actually brought the diamond system in for that team that won the World Cup. And at that time in English soccer, everybody played just about, or with wingers and wide players, and it was crosses and things like that. So I'm hoping that we will become the wingless wonders of Nashville under BJ in this new style.
What are the, now you were talking about it specifically there, but obviously you were here for all of Gary Smith's run as the manager in MLS, and I know that you watched some of him in USL as you were getting ready for that first MLS season. And you obviously got to call games watching BJ last year. Just your sort of, because you're removed from it now, kind of what are your takeaways when you look at this NSC team? You look at this rebuild, like, does it seem like a natural rebuild, or does it seem like there's something like very different that we're not catching because we're too close? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's just the natural evolution of, when you bring in a new head coach. And, there wasn't too much to read into what we saw at the end of last season because BJ came in quite late, really. The other thing to factor in is that, he's come into this pre-season. This is the first time he's actually got his total staff together. This is now all his staff. He came in last year. John Bayo came in as well. But ultimately, he's kind of working with like half the old staff. And it's a point of the year as well where it was like, well, we still want to chase for the playoffs, so we've got to try and do that. But at the same time, I'm trying to build for the future. Turnover started obviously on the off season. We've waved goodbye to the likes of Randall Leal and Anibal Godoy. I mean, there's still that little bit of spine from the first days of MLS, at least, that is there. If you think of Joe Willis at the back and then push through the field, and ultimately you've got Hanny kind of somewhere up top or forward midfield. And I think it's going to continue to evolve, and new parts are going to come in. BJ is going to continue to try and implement his methods on this group, and you can see it in places. I mean, there's some parts. I was quite encouraged watching aspects of it. I really like Kasim, who came in the second half. I think he looks like he could be a really good player. And I'm a converted fan to Tagseth already, having just seen 2 games of him, because I think his combination play with Hani Mukhtar and the understanding they seem to be picking up is really encouraging. But I think it's like we're putting building blocks in place, and I think it's going to take some time for us to see the full net result of that.
And Tony, just on that, I think a lot of fans are willing to give in a little bit of time in terms of finding success right away to build those building blocks, like you were saying. But I do think I was just talking about this in the first segment. I do think some success in terms of winning or goals will have to come very soon before that sort of feel good aspect at Geodis Park starts changing a little bit and shifting, like kind of what we saw last season. So, how long do you think Nashville can go without really getting the results and getting those important points? With just being able to say we're building, so we're just not going to be able to win at this moment.
Yeah, absolutely fair point as well. But I mean, we can sit here for all year long and talk about we can see nice things happening. We can see good combinations. We can see the seeds of what's to come. And I think we're in that phase a bit at the moment, but we can't keep talking about that week after week. Ultimately it's about winning. And this is still a very competitive Nashville squad out there with veteran players who've got great experience in this league and know how to win in this league, and some new good parts that are coming in. And BJ will be aware, need to start getting some results. Home draw first game against New England, no goals. Away defeat, no goals. Week 2. First things first, fans at Geodis Park are going to want to see some goals, and they're also going to want to see it win fairly soon. Portland represents, you would think in theory, a good opportunity to do that this weekend. So everybody in sports knows that the pressure is to win. If we look back to the Gary Smith era, I think he won 100 games as Nashville head coach across the leagues. That by anybody's assessment in that period of time, that's a successful era. And he set a fantastic foundation for this club to move forward and navigated some of the most difficult times you ever likely to see, particularly in 2020. And those 2020 and 2021 teams. 2 good teams that actually, were not too far away when all was said and done. So now the challenge is, the new era to build on what was left and to bring the new pieces in, but you still got to win some games while you're doing it. And everyone will be acutely aware of the pressure to do that, and they'll want that to happen fairly soon.
I mean, this is a bit of a pull, but it does make me laugh. You remember like the first 2 months of Ake Loba, and every time he'd make a turn that would beat everyone, you'd be like, oh man, there's something there. And so hopefully it's not a situation like that.
No.
So just kind of moving from there into a different sort of thing, you're calling a bunch of these early Nashville home games. When you get a Nashville game at home, does it feel like coming home?
Yeah,
And,
very much so. I mean, I'm still a resident of Tennessee, and I still obviously follow and am close to what happens at Nashville because of just the general proximity of being around, and have so many good friends, all across the club, from the footballing side to the business side. So, it's always good to do your local team. And it's just that nice factor that it's even just a little short drive to get to the stadium, and there's the faces of whether it be the security as you come in and the faces in the media room, whatever. It's great, and it's one of the best stadiums to be commentating on in soccer over here. It's a fantastic venue. It's one of the loudest venues. Everything about a Nashville home game is an experience I always look forward to, and indeed, my many colleagues now across Apple TV with both the English and Spanish language, they all enjoy coming to Nashville to do Nashville games because it has got that reputation as being a really good place to come and see a match.
now, does it feel any more like coming home whenever you cover a scoreless draw?
I've seen 1 or 2, but then again, so have you. Hey, come on, we marveled at times over the solidity and just the way that this team has been able to churn out clean sheets, as Gary Smith would call them down the years. And yeah, I mean, I saw a few more on the road than I think I saw at home, because at home has usually been, a relatively good fortress, although we had that season of all the draws, didn't we? But it was an unbeaten season at home. So, I'm never going to knock, Clay. I'm never going to knock a 0-0 draw. It's still a clean sheet in the books. It's like we say
I'm an
in cricket.
Evertonian. I agree.
It's like we say in cricket, it's not about, you can go out and bat really badly and get 50 runs, and that's a half century, and you can come off and people say that was really scratchy and not a very good performance. But you said, but if you look in the scorebook, it says you got 50, and that's the important thing.
I mean, that was the performance you brought up on here on this very show the first time you came on.
All right, we have now
understood everything you said.
I just need to let you guys know, when it comes to the counter, we have now brought up cricket twice. All right, the third time there is the 3 strikes and you're out. I like having listeners
That's baseball,
to this show.
not cricket, Stephen.
You've done it. Well, all of our listeners are now gone. Thank you very much. That was very good, Clay. Thank you for everything that you've done.
Important question. We're going to talk about Apple TV. We're going to talk about MLS here in a minute. So you've got the Portland game this weekend.
Yeah.
Is Nashville going to score a goal against Portland?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I've yet to watch the full Portland game back from the weekend. So obviously it was an improvement for them on week 1. But this, I think, is a Portland team that has been a little bit fragile at the back in recent times. And I don't know necessarily whether they really strengthen that area in the off-season. So I think Nashville will score this weekend. And, it's a really good opportunity for them, I'm sure.
All right. So we've talked about it a little bit. You're in year 3 of Apple TV. I ran down your broadcasting history a little bit a few minutes ago. But now that it's sort of settled into the way that things, like, you kind of know the routine and how things go with Apple TV, how does that compare to your other international broadcasting experience?
Well, from the world, we call it the world feed in kind of international broadcasting. When you do these events and you're basically sending out the match coverage for a global audience, and so things are quite structured and rigid in what you do in terms of how you bring the show onto the air, and then you go into the game. You'll see them do this kind of same thing, same principles pre-game. You see the players to watch later in the season. You'll see us always do the standings, and you'll see the head coaches early in the game, and you'll see a lot of the same graphics week in, week out. And some of those graphics, I think, really kind of heighten that kind of broadcast experience. I quite like the new one we've got, which is called Match Momentum, which we bring in the second half, and that gives you kind of like a chart. It's a bit like when you go and have a good run on the running machine, and you can take the mountain. You decide to take an up and down route. You see how the game is played out, like who's in the ascendancy here, and it goes across the screen like that.
All of
You're
us
shaking your head, Clay.
on running machines. That is something that we're all really into.
But it's the treadmill, I should say. You know what I mean. But no, so there is that kind of structure to an Apple broadcast that's designed to kind of make it appealing to hopefully the local fan who's tuning in to watch their local team, and you hear the familiarity of the voices as you get to know the group of Apple broadcasters, and then there's also that element of bringing it to the world. It's just small things really that people probably don't even notice, but I will try never to say good evening, because you don't know where the person who's watching this from. They might be watching it in the morning, so you try and say hello. It's little minor things, but those are things that are kind of drilled into you when you do world feed broadcasting, when you're traveling around the world, because you never know who is tuning in and from where, and you just kind of reflecting that in the way that you'll do the broadcast. But the essential kind of, once you're doing the game, though, I don't think it changes too much from how we were calling a match when we were in Nashville before and doing it on My TV 30.
My TV 30. Gosh, what a callback. Good time.
That's a blast from the past, isn't it?
Yeah.
The channel still exists, I think, right?
Well, I think so, yeah. And the desk. You see the studio desk we had for one glorious year at Geodis Park. It still gets rolled out for big occasions, press conferences, and things.
Yes.
But you don't see me sitting behind it.
I was watching the home opener on the terrace, and it was a little bit of a bummer that y'all weren't set up over there.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean, there's no good times. I mean, and we used to wave across there, and there was plenty of orange Gatorade, by the way, under the desk there. 95 degrees in July or something, and suit and tie on in that corner. Yeah, very good times.
it was still
So
always really funny to me, especially just because after match routines, I was like picking up drums and stuff like that. After every single match, Jamie Watson would then turn over and be like, "So, Steven, how are things? How?" And it, normally we watch the 0-0 draw or something, but it was after every match he would just be so kind and generous. You guys have always been so good to us here, throughout the years. God, I can't believe it's been this long in
It's
some ways.
amazing. Time is flying fast. I mean, I can't believe it's the third. We're in the third season of Apple now already. I mean, because it still feels a comparatively kind of a new project and new way of doing things, which makes thinking back to some of the broadcasts of 2020 seem almost a lifetime ago now. Amazing.
well, and I know that you're someone who was a big fan of American sports before you moved to America, specifically the NFL and things like that. And now you came in specifically to cover one team, and now you're in a position where you cover the whole league. And I am sure that you did a lot of research before you accepted a job covering MLS, but I know that it was a bit of a foreign concept to come into that league, to come into this league and kind of learn the way that the different like the cultures of the different teams. And I don't just mean like in terms of like fans, I mean in terms of like business cultures and player cultures and like in the way that teams are operate and put together. Like, what is the way that you have adapted like from covering you cover the teams that would come in for NSC, but you're doing it for a Nashville SC audience in those days. Like, what have been your tactics over these like 2+ years now of doing the national games for kind of getting yourself in an environment and learning how they operate so that you can convey that message, to an international audience?
Yeah, I think obviously you're aware that you're calling the broadcast absolutely right down the middle, and if you're doing games in Nashville and you had a past association with Nashville as a kind of voice of the team, you make sure that you just revert. Really, I just kind of click my mind back to how I worked when I worked with the BBC, where it was you called it straight down the middle. The thing I would always bear in mind if I'm doing a Nashville game now compared with before is you should never try to assume anything anyway whenever you're broadcasting, but obviously Nashville fans will remember things. I will remember things in games that from 2021 or whatever, and you sometimes think oh yeah, I remember that happening away at Philly in 2021. You've got to be aware that obviously a lot of the audience won't know what you're referring to there, and you've got obviously a significant part of the audience is rooting for the opposition as well. So you do adjust things, look at it slightly differently. I think I'm always just aware as well of we're primarily serving a North American audience at the time that the game is on, but you are taking into account that global audience. So I really now like to look into the backgrounds of players who might come from Scandinavia or Australia or Japan or whatever, and you really kind of take into account an opportunity if it is you get the chance even to actually kind of just say find a way of saying a quick hi to anybody who might be tuning in. I remember when Jasper last year came on the team, just dropped a little mention in to his local community, over there in Australia.
The other Liverpool.
The other Liverpool, that's right, Liverpool, yeah, Liverpool, the Liverpool in the suburbs. But no, but that's really that's really something that you become a bit more aware of doing it for a global audience. So the fact that you don't know where people are tuning in for, and you want to make sure that they feel as welcome to the broadcast as possible. And I still like to throw soccer time in Tennessee in there sometimes, but do that more as a nod to the past, and that was always a nod to Tennessee sporting tradition anyway. And it's occasionally still nice to be able to say it.
Now, do you have a group of teams that you're given by the league, or is it truly they'll just send you wherever they need you? Is it just like here are your 5 teams that you need to prepare for, or is it more open?
No, it's pretty open, really, Villa. Yeah, it could be anywhere and everywhere. I mean, in the early weeks of the season, the geography has helped us quite well. I think it helped that Nashville had four of the first six at home, and of course Ross Smith, my co-commentator, and I, both being based in Tennessee. I think it was just helpful at this stage of the year, at the beginning of the year, that we can do those games more often than not. Obviously, the geography of Nashville is great because you've got Atlanta not far, Charlotte's not far, St. Louis not far, and really it's only the West Coast that is a significant distance away. But during the course of a year, we might go across to the West Coast a couple of times. More often than not, we're going to occupy more of the center, the south, and the northeast. But it does require being across all the teams. And so the more this league expands, the more I find myself trying to keep across the goings on at now 30 teams. Because at any point during the season, you're going to cover virtually all of them. I think last year, possibly only Montreal and Vancouver were possibly the only two teams I didn't do, because we even had San Jose here in Nashville at one point, and I hadn't done many San Jose games down the years, and that still remains one of my stadiums that I haven't been to. I think I have Montreal, San Jose, and now San Diego that I haven't done a game at. I think those are the only ones now that I've not been to across
That's actually
MLS.
really impressive. That's really impressive.
Yeah. Some of it's. I mean, Vancouver was with Nashville when Jack Mayer got the brace, and then they got a penalty. And I thought, surely Jack's going to take it. And Dax took it, and it was saved. Yeah. Our now colleague, Dax McCarty, of course, at Apple. But, it's great. I mean, it's one of the just wonderful things about this is such an enormous country, and obviously up into Canada as well. It's just fantastic to travel around, to see the different cultures, the different football stadiums, the different fan bases. And I never tire of that at all.
With that, you've seen a lot of kind of new players come into the league. A lot of major things happen when it comes to MLS. I think the easy answer would be Messi here specifically. So we're going to say, no, that's not the case. Is there a player that has been like a really fun addition for you to be able to cover and just watch as you currently are kind of covering this league just in such a national perspective and seeing more things? Is there a player that's been especially fun for you to watch that you've really enjoyed covering, whether it comes to meeting them, seeing them on the pitch? What has it been like for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's a few that spring to mind, I suppose, to enjoy watching. There's one or two, the explosive players who score goals you always instantly think of. So I think of it like a Cucho when he was in Columbus, and you always know you're going to get a good game if you got Cucho. And then when Atlanta had were looking so good at one point, watching their team that had Giacomakis in it, and the Argentine midfielder as well, who'd now moved on, whose name briefly escapes me.
Almiron.
Well, not Almiron. Almiron's
Almada.
Sorry,
Almada.
Yeah. He's Paraguayan. Don't worry about him.
I wasn't going to pick you up on that, but I suddenly think, no, Argentine. Yeah. But he was fantastic, Almada. And great to watch, on a game. And then I'll throw somebody else in, though, that is different because he doesn't always do the flashy things, but he's just a fantastic footballer to watch. And I think he's been one of the best kind of central midfield, holding midfield players in North America for many years. And it's a shame that the US men's national team didn't see more of him. But I have loved watching Darlington Nagbe at Columbus. And I wish that he was kind of 3 or 4 years, 5 years younger, and that he still had a long time still to play, because I've just been so impressed with him. And we had a chance to talk to him a couple of times. And I just think he's a fabulous footballer doing that particular role in a team. So it's not always just about the players who we see, banging in the goals, but he's been great.
He's featured in Onside, the documentary that Apple TV has put together a little bit in an episode. But that reminded me, your voice is in there quite often on Onside. I don't know if you've watched yet, but
I'm only one episode in so far.
Okay.
But I think it's pretty good. It's a pretty good start, and I think it's going to be really, really enlightening. I've said to quite a few people back in the UK, if you want to get a gist of kind of understanding of the league and a bit more about it, then this is a really good way to do it.
Yeah.
And the producers, believe it or not, the producer's a Southampton fan. Which was
Poor
just a
guy.
curious.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, at the moment that's tough. But with my past association with Southampton, I was quite surprised to see that. But no, I think it's good, and I'm glad players like Darlington getting that spotlight as well in this series.
I actually have watched Darlington Nagbe play in college because he
So
played
you've
at
been lucky
Akron.
enough to see him for a long time.
It was really cool because he very briefly played for the national team and he captained the national team, which considering he came in as a refugee and stuff was really cool moment. But yeah, if he were just a few years younger, he would have been. I mean, unfortunately, that happens to a lot because Dax was kind of in the same spot for a long time where he would have been a locked on national team starter if he came like 10 years earlier or 10 years later.
Yeah.
And he was just kind of in that weird spot where it didn't really work out.
Mm.
This kind of goes along with that, though. Obviously, Nagby's a guy who came out of college, but you're in a position where previously when you covered the sport in England. Obviously, you did cover teams outside of the Premier League, as we've talked about. But a lot of times when you're covering a league like the Premier League, you're talking about players coming in from places that are pretty well known, whether it's one of the big five leagues in Europe. And if it's outside of those leagues, it's one of the big teams outside of the big five leagues. Whereas in MLS, a lot of the guys who come in and are super impactful are players from all over the world, maybe just outside of that realm. And so you're seeing guys that you wouldn't have seen in any other way, like the Scandinavian players that are with Nashville. Honey Mukhtar obviously had played in Germany and had played, in other places that of some esteem, but like he also came out of that sort of world as well. So it feels like you're in a position where you are looking at the best players coming from relatively mid-tier leagues from around the world. And I'm just curious, like when you're adjusting to now that you've been calling it for years, so you're not really adjusting, but like that adjustment of kind of reframing what you think a good player is. I do wonder how that affects you as a broadcaster.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that kind of central question, which we're all kind of constantly asking ourselves, which is, where is MLS in the kind of global list of leagues, and then I mean, you're absolutely right, Clay. Some of the recruitment has been really interesting in that it's often you'll see it's the Greek league, the Hungarian league, the Polish league, the Scandinavian leagues, maybe the creeping into the Dutch league, kind of low end first tier French league.
South
Sometimes,
America, all over
yeah,
South
and then
America,
of course
yeah.
the Central and South American influence is huge. I mean, that for me probably is one of the most has been one of the learning curve moments. Really, is to kind of understand more actually about the Central and South American influence, the teams, the leagues, the countries. Who's got a good league, whose league isn't that good. For, how much of a step up is it to go from a South American league to MLS, or are they stepping sideways, stepping backwards, whatever. So yeah, this has become such a global league, and I think it holds it in very good stead as we look forward. I think it's going to continue to just grow and grow and grow and get a little bit bigger as time goes on. And I think part of the key to that is going to be the global presence of so many different nationalities coming from so many different leagues and playing here, and word will spread, and is continuing to spread amongst the kind of football playing community about what life in America can be like, and that the league is a league that's on an upward trajectory. And the Scandinavian leagues have certainly proved effective for Nashville in particular. When you think of the success of the signing of Mukhtar, Yazbek looks decent, and Tagsev I'm excited by, and then Ahmed Kassem has come in as well.
Yep.
So, we're about to wrap things up for this segment, but you are 2 weeks into this season. You cover the league as a whole. There's been some big headline generators, I think, even in those 2 weeks. What are your sort of big MLS takeaways thus far into the season?
Well, I think it's interesting that the Galaxy have lost 2 games. It doesn't happen often that a defending champion is 2 games down. That said, they are a shadow of the team at the moment that won MLS Cup. So, it's kind of when you hear people say the champions have lost 2 games, but are they the champions right now? Because they don't look like the champions. They're missing so many key parts. And indeed, they've had to part with 1 or 2 as well. So, but that's been interesting. I think Miami, look, I know that people have differing views about how much they want to focus on Miami during a year. But at the end of the day, globally, they're a huge story. They're a huge club. And what goes on there is going to be a big headline in MLS. I'm interested to see how they get on this year, juggling the fact that they have CONCACAF to play in the Champions Cup, obviously, at the moment. Then they've got the Club World Cup. And then the MLS year is just a long, long year. Can they go better than last year where, they peak, they win the league, it looks like they're all set to just go steaming through the playoffs and lift the cup. And then suddenly, actually, they kind of hit a roadblock straight away when they got in the playoffs. Can they be, at their peak early in December to do what they really ultimately want to do, which is lift that trophy? Across in Charlotte, Wilfried Zaha got crowned at the weekend. I said the moment he came here, because I saw him a lot at Crystal Palace in his heyday, he is an absolute entertainer of a player. He's going to be a huge star in this league. I think people will love watching him play. Brilliant character. Just a great signing for this league. And then, here in Nashville, I just think we want to see this team show some progress and start to, move on in a new era. And we want to see Hani Mukhtar getting back to some of those best days that we saw a couple of years ago. And I, for one, am certainly going to be, when I'm not calling the games, a very interested observer in it. And when I'm calling it, obviously looking forward to all those matches at Geodis Park.
Tony, I have to ask you this before we wrap up here. But will you be returning to the men's league this spring?
Oh, the Mid-State, the most important football of the week.
Yes.
I haven't seen you. We haven't played in the same game yet, Valère, but if my knee holds out, I will be returning. And I scored last week on the turn, left footer, hit it in the corner. It was probably sadly a consolation for us, but
I just have heard a lot about your ability to play out there in the streets of Nashville, if you would, or the fields of Nashville.
A broadcaster had to replace the reputation of John Freeman on the soccer pitch, and
true.
I guess Tony Husband is that broadcaster, and you can hear him, watch him, however you might want to do it, on Apple TV this weekend as Nashville plays against Portland. And you heard it here. He says Nashville's going to score a goal. He said it on Pharma Soccer, so that means it's going to happen. And if it doesn't, it's all his fault and he jinxed the team. So That being said, thanks for coming back to the Pharmacy, Tony.
Guys, always great to see you. And fingers crossed for this weekend, eh?
Yep, absolutely, Tony. Thank you so much. We'll be back here after this to talk a little bit more about Nashville, Portland, as well as give our plugs and predictions. We'll do that next right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer at PharmaSoccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, make sure you go check out 615 Soccer. As stated, Tony Husband gets a ton of his information from 615 Soccer when it comes to reviewing Nashville and all the things. So please, be like the broadcasters at Apple TV. Check out 615soccer.com. Get that content specifically. Would love to have you a part of it. Tony kind of wrapped up just some of the takeaways from the past 2 weeks. There is still one thing I want to bring up, though, because I think it's very interesting when it comes to teams transitioning, where Nashville, unfortunately, transitions, and we haven't scored a goal yet. Philadelphia transitions to a new coach and gets away from probably one of the best coaches in MLS history and is amazing.
Yeah, well, they also have a very clear system, and they have one of the best academies in the world. So, they're producing good players. They have a good system, and it's been 2 games. I am still adamant that they're not going to be as good come the end of the season. So, Bradley Carnell has already done this once with St. Louis, and then look where they are right now. So, just saying, give it a minute. 2 games.
We play one, they have one of those 2 games against Nashville if we're giving him 2 games. So I'm going to remember this in 2 weeks.
No, I'm not saying give him 2 games. I'm saying it's been 2 games.
No.
And yes, they looked really good against Cincinnati, but
I know.
Let's stop a little bit and think that's only been 2 weeks.
I know. I'm just saying.
Hani Mukhtar, like he did to St. Louis, get a hat trick to really just kind of blow it up. Normal
Uh,
service has resumed.
any other interesting matches over the weekend you guys had fun watching? Any storylines, anything fun?
I mean, the big one, I mean, we've talked about it before, is Miami getting a huge performance without Messi is a pretty big shot across the bow for the rest of the league. I mean, it's Houston, but still, that's like worrying signs as a
Right.
team that's in the Eastern Conference.
The Colorado Dallas match was on steroids. It was insane. 3-3, called off goals. Lucho Acosta scoring a chip on his first goal for Dallas. I mean, it's just fun. So go watch highlights of that if you haven't seen it.
Shout out to Forster Ajago, 2 goals and
Oh
two.
yeah,
Uh,
somebody on this show said that he might start producing for Real Salt Lake. I wonder who it was.
I think all three of us did. I don't think that you get that exclusively if that's what you were
I
trying
get
to
that
say.
exclusively because I'm the one who brought it up. You agreed with me. You agreed with my
either
take.
way, we do like him. I don't know. We'll see. But moving
No,
on, Nashville
yeah.
plays Portland.
Anyway,
Also,
yes.
one other league thing I thought was really fun. Well, it wasn't fun, but San Diego getting smacked in the face when it comes to homophobic chants, starting fairly early in their career. I hope they get that figured out and are able to kind of get it away. Um, definitely something that we didn't go through as bad in Nashville, but still had to experience in some ways. I hope San Diego can figure that stuff out and really get a grasp on their supporters chanting and stuff like that, because that's not cool. So don't do that. Okay, San Diego? Okay, thank you guys for listening. Appreciate it. Look, we do play Portland on Saturday at home. Portland has had an interesting start to the season, starting off. I believe they've had a lot of fan protests, specifically when it comes to this team and its performance and all the things going on organizationally, um, and have also had a weird start to the league itself.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I
Phil
mean,
Neville. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what is a team in Portland, Oregon, without a fan protest of some sort? I mean, that's kind of comes with the territory. To be fair, some of it very justified. To be fair, it's funny.
Phil Neville continues to have this team, and I don't know. I don't know if Phil Neville is a good coach or not. I think that's kind of the question out there. The biggest thing coming in from last season was that Portland has the attack figured out. They were the only team with multiple double-digit scorers. I think they had four double-digit scorers in there. But that seems to have kind of faded away a little bit with Evander leaving. That's got to be the biggest departure. They replaced Evander with DeCosta, um, who scored the winning goal this past weekend. So clearly he's coming in from League On. He's clearly he's kind of already making an influence. On that first week, they lost to Vancouver. They got a red card. I don't know, like 6 minutes into the game, with Kamal Miller. And just got smoked by Vancouver 4-1. It seems like they fixed some things against Austin, and kept the likes of Brandon Vasquez, Nashville legend, and all like 50 or 60 million of Austin's attackers that they bought. They kept a clean sheet against them. Not to be fair, they were playing at home for Portland. But nonetheless, I think that's a pretty important result for them to kind of turn things around, because you're right, Steven. I think a lot of fans, especially after the whole Evander situation where he went publicly against the club, and we was held up and they weren't able to get their signings in order and all that. I think that's kind of going to be their fans, I think, are wanting to see something. But that goal came in really late. It came in the 90th minute, I believe. I'm yet to kind of do my full research on them, but all things considered, they are one of the weaker sides in terms of defensively. So the fact that they kept Austin at bay is a little surprising. But I think Nashville, kind of like Tony was saying, I think we'll be looking at this. That Nashville attacker specifically will be looking at this as something to penetrate and get a goal or two against. They do play with three at the back, which leaves a lot of space, which would be a great matchup for Jacob Schaffelberg if he was available, but we don't
Well,
know if he is.
Valer, we have a lot of new people listening now, a lot of things that we need to make sure that we are on top of. It was the 89th minute, not the 90th minute. So if you can make sure that you do your research before coming into, giving your stuff like that, that'd be great. Can you do that better for us?
No.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you
Yep.
very much for answering that
Yep.
in the best way possible. It's very kind of you. Look, but it is at home, so it's always fun. Hope you guys have a fun at Geodis Park. Clay, why don't you give your plugs and predictions for the match against Portland?
Yeah, follow me at Clay Lassol on Twitter and Instagram. Check out Nashville Soccer Archive. And I will actually not be at the game because I have tickets to a performance that I got before the MLS schedule came out. So I will be watching the game on delay because I'll be at Hadestown at TPAC. And so the next day when I settle in and watch the replay, I will be watching a 3-1 Nashville win with goals from Hani Mukhtar, uh, Walker Zimmerman, because I said he was going to be the first goal scorer of the season, and Ahmed Kassim.
Wow, that's kind of what I was gonna predict, but now I'm gonna change it because Clay said it, and I'm not a copier. I do want to plug in something that I don't usually, well, not the same. Shout out 615 Soccer, of course, but I want to talk about Kicking at 615. We're a local nonprofit who help kids who can't afford play soccer for free. So if you can help us out, please help us out at the ki615.org and at kicking is 615 on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We need coaches, we need volunteers, and we need money. So help us out however you can. Again, ki615.org and at kicking is 615. Nashville SC will win this game 2-1 with goals from Ahmed Qasim and Sam Surridge. And Felipe Mora will score for Portland because why not?
Yeah, 615soccer.com. Again, Valer is correct. Chaos 615 is an amazing organization. Please make sure you do help them out. Go check them out. Do all the things for them. It's a lot of fun to volunteer and coach, and it is a ton of fun. So please go do that. At PHStephenHD for all of my stuff. So go do that. I'm going to try to do some reverse psychology here. It is going to finish in a 0-0 draw in Nashville, and everybody's going to hate their lives. And we're going to be the only team in MLS that hasn't scored after week 3. That is my prediction, as we are currently one of 5 that haven't scored yet. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to the show. Currently appreciate it. Really, not currently. We really appreciate it all the time. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week to talk more about that Portland match. So tune in. Thank you again, Tony, for being on the show. See you next week.